Reyes from MedX, Lisa Moynihan from Blockchain Industries, and Callie Nye of Siren. So I'm going to pass it off to you ladies and grab you one more mic.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Allison. My name is Nikki Brown. I'm the Senior Content Strategist at Melrose PR. I think we can go ahead and sit down. That's a good idea. I'm also the guest host of Crypto Token Talk. So this is a 101 blockchain and crypto podcast. So we talk about all things blockchain and crypto that are emerging in the space. So if anyone wants to check it out, you might learn a thing or two. Beyond that, I'm also a contributing writer to Distributed.com, where I focus on the intersection of blockchain and media in particular. So with this marketing panel, what we'd like to do is each introduce ourselves, and I'd also like to expand the introduction to include if anyone wants to talk about a recent experience you've had, or like Lisa, I know you've had some interesting recent experiences, maybe you could expand upon that, or any thoughts you have about how far this space has come in the past few years, or thoughts on where it might go leading into 2019. So I'll hand it off to Zaji.
Hi everyone, Zaji Reyes. I'm VP of Marketing at MetaX. We're a Santa Monica-based company. We do blockchain and ad tech. So we created Ad Token a couple years ago, and it's the token that functions within our decentralized application, which is called the AdChain Publisher Registry. We're actually the first to have done a token-curated registry, so Sarah enlightened us a little bit of how that works, but that's what we're working on at MetaX, and I've been with the company since the start. It's been really exciting to see where things are going, not only in blockchain, but also how far ad tech is coming as well, and I'm really excited to be here today, so thank you for having me. And I would say something that I'm excited to see in 2019 is the fact that decentralized applications are actually coming to fruition. I think when I started, there was a lot of concept, a lot of white papers, but I hadn't really seen too much in action. And so now that I'm seeing decentralized applications start to come out and be used, I'm hoping that in 2019, conferences like this, like DevCon, Ethereal Summit, can kind of bring a lot of developers together and really great minds, and we can start to actually use these dApps so that they can become adopted in society today. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Moynihan with Blockchain Industries. I oversee our corporate communications, conferences, and media, and the forward-facing image of the company to the world, our branding, our messaging, et cetera. We have three arms of businesses at Blockchain Industries. Our merchant banking division, which consists of a blockchain technology advisory service that is overseen by Managing Director Paul Kim. We also have our investment management arm, which is a family of funds that is overseen by our portfolio manager and head of research, Kevin Hugh. And then we also have our Blockchain Unbound conference series, which is a global conference series think tank. Our last conference was just 1 week ago in Tokyo, and I oversee the production of those conferences where we curate and gather the best of the best and the brightest in the industry to gather together and examine the state of our industry every 6 months. From there, we dig deep, we ask the tough questions, and we challenge ourselves, our speakers, our attendees, our entrepreneurs, our investors to go out into the world and continue to grow the industry in a responsible way and how we can really work together. So I'll have more on that in a minute.
Thanks. Good to be here. I'm Callie. I'm the CEO and founder of Siren.io. We are a token sale advisory company. We do growth hacking, community marketing for token sales, ICOs, and other crypto projects. I've been in this space for about a year. Our first token sale was Referium. We were the first to hit 100K in Telegram, so I apologize to all of you for that. We'll be talking a little bit about that more. I'm also the founder of SlumberParty.io, which is a community for women to kind of enter blockchain. And I have a clothing line called Naughty Gits, which is for women in tech.
Excellent. So I think we probably all understand the importance of good communications and marketing, because it doesn't matter how you might have a really great project, it could be brilliant, but if no one knows about it and no one uses it, then it doesn't do you any good. So I'd like to now kind of go through, starting with you, Zaji, and offer up 3 strategies for how to improve your marketing and communications.
Sure, yes. So something that I would say is really important is managing expectations with your community. I think a lot of times marketing in this space has become a lot of hype and excitement around what you're creating, but you also have to be honest about where you are in development. For us, having the first token curated registry, it was extremely exciting, and we've had a lot of projects like Soma come out of what we've done, but we've also learned from that experience being the first, and we've had a few things that we want to share with the community about what we've learned. And so being honest about where our development was actually, where it was at, there was a lot of successes, but there were also a lot of things that we learned about how, you know, the community interacts differently than when you logically create something, and then when it's actually out on the market, people, you know, start to share their opinions, and it becomes sometimes more political or more about the culture of the times. And so having to understand that and explain to our community what that's like, and also where we want to go with token curated registries, is something that we've been excited to do. And I think that's just all part of managing expectations. There's a lot of great things that will come out of your project, but you also have to know that you won't be successful in everything. We're some of the first to do what we're doing today in blockchain, so being honest about that. Secondly, I would always say, if you do have Telegram or communities like Discourse, making sure that the conversation stays product focused or is useful. There's going to be a lot of noise. You're going to have trolls. You're going to have people bugging you just for token price and things like that. So, you know, as a moderator, if any of your moderators come in and try to keep the conversation focused on your vision, your goals, and what you're working towards, that's important to remember, and just to keep reminding them. And the community will respect you for that. I mean, there will be people who just want to talk about tokens, or just about, you know, things that you're doing that they want to bug you about. But other people will come out of the community and say, you know, I really respect you for the work that you're doing and the focus that you have on your product development. So that's another great thing that we've learned at MetaX. And then finally, creating content for not just crypto, but also your vertical. So for us, that's ad tech. So I've had to learn a lot how to create content that appeals to media buyers and ad ops professionals, as well as crypto investors and blockchain enthusiasts and developers. So I would say make sure that you can balance the two so that you can hit all of your target audiences and really bring them in and show them just how much potential your project really has.
So when I think about this question, I think that the most important thing is how you say what it is you need to market, not what you're saying, not the content, not, you know, the deep logistics of it, because we're in a unique time where we're bridging the gap with traditional investors. Their ears are perked up, they're ready to listen, they're ready to invest, but not quite understanding completely what we do. So, for example, I had the chance and opportunity to meet the new Minister of Science and Technology in Japan, Hirai-san, and the first thing he said to me was, I love blockchain, but not crypto. I hear this sentiment all the time, and the first thing that pops in my head is, he doesn't understand. And I think that that's existing everywhere. So how we say our marketing pieces to bridge that gap, which also brings me into the idea of what's happening with the STO coming out, the ICO seeming to be, you know, it's very hard to sell a utility token right now. It's not even 6 months ago in the industry. So there's this emergence of the STO being backed with an asset where we're seeing people, you know, securitizing hotels. I was on a roundtable for regulations over in Tokyo the day after our conference, and there was a big conversation about securitizing cows. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I did not come to crypto to securitize a cow token. I mean, let's be honest. How much sense does that make? But to the rest of the world that wants to understand how to make money in this market, it makes sense. So, you know, I really believe this STO and asset-backed coin is a necessary evil right now. I think we might see a similar rise and fall like we did with the ICO, and then potentially the reemergence of an ICO, because now everyone understands what it is. But I think we're still early in that understanding, and so how we say our messaging is more important than even the content. We just have to create something tangible that people can take back with your product and get out there. And the other thing I would say is, don't underestimate the value of networking, grassroots relationships, getting involved in this industry. Put yourself out there with people that are interested in regulations. Be a part of the community building that they were just talking about on the panel earlier. From those connections, if you put yourself forward to work and band together with the community, the return will be interest in your projects tenfold, because you're looking for the good of everyone, not just, your project and the love of money, as Sarah said earlier. And then finally, I heard some interesting feedback when I was in Tokyo from our fund managers, and that would be that they are more interested in an equity play than tokens at this point. They also felt it was vital that entrepreneurs work directly with the protocol, try to raise a little bit of money on your own and get something working, get your technology working so you can show something more than just a white paper, which no longer cuts the cake. It was so easy a year ago, and I think this time is very interesting given that information, because now is a time where the real technology that's going to shape and change the future is going to be developed, because the projects that don't have real meat behind them won't survive in this market. So if you have real tech that's going to survive, that you really believe in, live, breathe, eat it, throw yourself into the entire community, don't underestimate that grassroots networking marketing. It does work.
Thank you. I would have to say the biggest thing, I say this to all my clients, is that blockchain and decentralized technology doesn't work without communities. Community is just as important as tech in this world. Same's true for traditional products. Obviously, a product is more valuable when people are using it, but with decentralized technology, it's literally dependent on people using it. Like, a network is not going to run if people aren't mining or running nodes or voting. And so community shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be part of the entire process. And I think a lot of people don't undervalue community. Another thing is that crypto communities are a fascinating little ecosystem, because they're made up of people from all over the world. If you're sitting in a Telegram room, it's pretty likely that there's somebody in there that's part of the LGBT community. There's people there who are from countries where LGBT people are killed. So it's this delicate ecosystem. Internationally, people have different values, and so we need to have empathy for that. So, we try not to push our values on everybody, but have maintain a certain level of rules and values for our community. It is a very delicate ecosystem. Another thing is, don't be reactionary. Especially in a bear market, there's a lot of emotions flying around, and they're usually not about you. And I feel a lot of companies there's a lot of FUD getting flown around, and companies kind of stop what they're doing and fix it. But a lot of times you just have to kind of keep pushing on with what you know is the right thing to do. Otherwise, you're just kind of constantly putting out fires for things that aren't really problems, because it's more about how they are feeling about the market, how they're feeling squeezed. So obviously hear them out, understand, that's why community is so important. Give them an opportunity to feel heard, but keep your eye on the ball.
Thank you all. I'm just going to second a lot of the things that were already talked about, but from the Melrose PR perspective. So one approach that we take, this is just very basic strategy of how to do your communications, but everything is important. So we talked about community. We do traditional PR and social media and community and content creation, but it's all important. So that's kind of like the 360 approach to communications. So if you land a story in a publication, or you write something that's published on Medium, then you post those links to your social media and your community channels, and that helps to gain more attention, and maybe that helps you to land another story. So it's kind of this circular feedback loop. So that's one thing that I wanted to note. Also, there's been kind of a general theme, I think, about speaking to the mainstream. And I think it's important to recognize that crypto and people who even know the difference, perhaps, between blockchain and crypto, it's still a very small group of people. And so for these platforms that are emerging to be successful, we need to expand the group, right? So being able to speak to the mainstream is paramount to that success. I would also add to that not just speaking to the mainstream, but speaking to a diverse audience. Because if your platform only reaches out to or appeals to a small segment of the population, let's say it only appeals to people who are into crypto, then that's a little bit too limiting. And then the last thing I would say is getting involved in your local community. And events like this are amazing. Be on Telegram, but then put a face to the name and meet people in person. Because I think there's still something to be said for that. As much as we live in this tech world where everything can be virtual, it does matter when you can shake someone's hand and be present. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions. Yeah.
In terms of marketing,
I have a mic for you.
in terms of marketing, besides the projects that you are affiliated with, what are the best case studies that you can recall that of other projects?
Does anyone want to speak to their own project or have anything to add to that?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of projects that are out there. I would say that some of the best ways that you can, are you asking the best way to present, or just a case study that I've seen that I really like? I think,
Wow.
yeah, I think some of the ones that have been really interesting for me have just been supply chain tracking. I went to a conference once and they presented their case study by giving us sushi, and we got to eat our sushi and then scan the QR code, and then we got to see where our sushi came from, right? So seeing the full feedback loop was really interesting to me. So I think that that's also a creative marketing tool, right? If you have a case study that can be interactive, or you have an example that you can do with people at a meetup or at a conference, that's probably your best way of engaging them, because a lot of the blockchain projects out there right now are very technical, and people don't quite understand them just from reading it or just from hearing a presentation. So show them, engage people in the audience and have them understand what you're trying to explain to them. So that was one of the coolest ones I've seen.
I'd like to, oh, great.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I had a really incredible meeting with the CTO of IBM Japan last week. Spent about 2 hours with this gentleman, and the woman, the senior managing director of blockchain at IBM. Yes, it's a woman in Japan. That was pretty impressive. She gave us a huge presentation, and I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but IBM was one of the first early adopters of using blockchain internally in a centralized fashion. I mean, this is old news now, and they have saved millions and millions of dollars, all related to supply chain. And they have several other research-based blockchain technology that they are, it's still an asset in research, but they're talking about, that's on their website. One is, about moving money. And the funniest thing that the lady was saying is that she had a little icon of the central banks over here. She said, yeah, they're not going to like this one too much, but we have this. And, so they've got a bunch of projects that I believe what they're doing and what moving forward, I mean, we could talk about past case studies up until now, but it's almost irrelevant because the ICO and the utility token is not performing like it was even 4 months ago. So I think we need to look at where we are right now and the future to answer your question well. So that's still going to be playing out, right? So essentially, I think that we're going to continue to see these use cases being developed where decentralization is working in tandem with centralization. And I believe that that marrying of those two concepts is what's going to really make a project successful. How is that going to happen? I think a lot of that's still going to unfold. I think IBM is one of the leaders trying to show us the way on that. But, in terms of how we're going to get beyond this hump, to the rest of the world, right? And really be able to make this a tangible thing. I think ultimately it's using decentralization with centralization in a way that makes sense to everybody. So it doesn't just look like it's, a crypto frenzy on the next hot coin, if that makes sense.
This is a hard question for me to answer, because the projects that I'm most drawn to are the ones that really, at their core, believe in decentralization, like more of the smaller masternode coins and things that, they don't do the big token sale. And so you go into the community and it's literally just all these people who are super passionate about the project. I haven't really, the company that I've seen that do that, the biggest company I've seen do that is probably Siacoin. They've done things since that I'm not a big fan of, but the way that they kind of grew into what they became, they have a lot of huge competitors, like Storage and Filecoin or whatever that one is. But they have these huge competitors that did the traditional like ICO, big hype game, like the airdrops, bounties, and that really just dilutes the passion in the community. So the companies that I see the most that I like, you probably haven't heard of yet because they're not playing this marketing hype game. So they're kind of just as the community is growing with the product, and they're just kind of happy with that. And I think that's cool.
And I could give an example of a client we worked with, Total, and actually the CEO, David Blesnick, is speaking tomorrow. So if anyone's curious and learning more, you might want to catch his talk. But Total does a really good job of explaining the why, which is so important when it comes to any crypto or blockchain project, because oftentimes there's a centralized version that already exists out there. So Total, it's a decentralized exchange. But there's a lot of other exchanges out there that are centralized or have centralized aspects to them, such as they might hold your private keys. But that means if they get hacked, then your information could be stolen by the hacker, and you could lose all your value that you had stored there. So they did an excellent job of explaining that. So I think that that's maybe a lesson a lot of projects could take is explain the why. Yes?
A couple of things that kind of made my ears perk. You were talking about asset-backed cryptos, and I know there's a lot of stable coins out there. Do you think the asset-backed crypto is kind of the future of at least where we're going? There's Gemini project and so on and so forth. And also, if you could expand on how centralization and decentralization can work in a way that, I know they're the purists out there, but in a way that it can make it more accessible for people and easier to use.
Sure, those are great questions. So, in terms of what was the question about the stable coin again? Can you?
Asset-backed.
Yeah.
Asset-backed coins. Does that
Is it
look
really
like,
the future or not? You really want? Okay, so, yeah, I understand. So my opinion on that is probably not going to be very popular, but I actually think it's realistic. So, as I sort of alluded to earlier, the security token offering, I believe, is necessary to help bridge the gap with institutions, with more traditional investors, to bring this market to the rest of the world, because they are interested, their ears are perked up, they want to know how to get involved. I mean, we all heard the news about Fidelity last week and the platform that they opened up and released. So I believe that it's necessary to securitize assets and back a coin that's securitized by an asset. However, I don't think it's going to last. I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see this, just like we did with the ICO. And I think the ICO, the utility token, will reemerge. And, like anything, I mean, you could go back to the housing market in 07 or 08. The initial coin offering was taken advantage of, not just in the United States, and other countries too. In Japan, last year, they lost the most. Their citizens lost more in crypto investments than any other country in the world. Why? They had this it was going on all over the country, multi-level marketing schemes for ICO investments. People didn't even know what they were putting money into. Technologies that only had a white paper that never even got built. So Japan, locked down on those ICO regulations, which they should have to protect its citizens, but they're still very bullish on blockchain and the technology and how it's going to change the world, and that's important, right? So I kind of believe something similar will happen with a security asset-backed token, where we're probably going to see anything and everything become securitized as a token, to the point where we're securitizing things that really don't need to be, that wasn't the purest intention of blockchain technology. And then that's probably going to have a little crash too. But I think it's going to be adopted pretty strongly over the next few years here, and then we'll probably see a reemergence of the ICO, or I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. I just think it's necessary to help the industry grow at this point. And then the other question was how decentralization and centralization can work together to make the technology more popular and mainstream. So, that is a great question. I think we need more businesses like IBM, and they're slowly creeping up. So when I say they're using decentralization in a centralized manner, it means that, everyone internally is using a decentralized platform for accuracy to help them make all their supply chain shipments and, protocols and verifications and everything completely accurate. And it's worked, and it's saved them hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think that is what we're going to continue to see out of tech companies, big tech names, is what we need to really give that stamp of approval to the rest of the world. If we can get more entrepreneurs creating technology that does that. We're working with a great platform called BlackFX right now, which was from the founders of Wickr. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Wickr, which is a secure messaging system that's never been hacked. And it's used by a lot of our governments, used by our own government, and I believe several others. But I believe what they're trying to do, and their layers of protection and security, is going to be adopted in a centralized way once their product is complete. And there'll be more on that coming up probably in the next year or so. So keep your ears open for BlackFX. Not to give them a shameless plug, but I do like their technology.
Anyone else for this one? I would just add that for anyone building a blockchain project or company, maintaining the reason why you started it. So if it's to empower people to maintain control over their data or their value or have more decision-making in governance, then not losing that. So if there's any aspect that's centralized, make sure to not lose the part that got you started in this space in the first place.
Something to that we've seen as well as in our governance model, we have it's votable by the community. So in a sense, it's still decentralized, but at least there is a level of governance that we've put into it from the start. It can get changed, different parameters can be voted upon, but it at least creates an opportunity for the community to have some sort of starting point and guidelines to work with. And then if they choose to change it, they have the opportunity to vote on it. So I think that's an example of decentralization kind of being centralized in a way, but working together.
Yep.
I have a mic for you, Clem.
So at what point, if someone is launching an ICO or STO project, would you recommend them starting their marketing, starting building their community?
Yesterday. This is something I feel very strongly about, is I usually feel when I'm brought into a project, I'm brought in too late. And I think that it's kind of a trend that, it's like, let's do all this stuff and then talk about how to get it out there. But the real growth can be built into products. It can be built into your entire strategy. It could be built in from the very beginning. And there's also a lot of things that, can be red flags to a community. And if you don't have somebody involved in that process from the very beginning, then you might, put something in your white paper that ends up being a huge red flag to people. And if you kind of tack on marketing later, you might miss that. There's also some opportunities in how you can announce things, A lot of people think that I have to have a white paper, I need to have this MVP, I need to have something, and then I'll hire marketing. But if you hire somebody in the beginning, or even if you just get an advisor who can talk about that process with you, they might be able to say, well, strategically for this, I think you should actually, put up. So basically, your reputation is something that's important when you release a white paper. So there's all of these aspects that people kind of take for granted. Before you ever release anything, who are you? Do you have a good reputation on the internet that somebody can help you build? Are you a thought leader? Maybe a marketing team could help you establish yourself as a thought leader in the industry that you're trying to go into. Also creating opportunities, getting you out there, making sure that you know a few people, so when you do announce, you have kind of a network with you. So there's a million things I can say would be helpful to have somebody marketing as soon as possible. So yeah.
Can I ask one thing on that? Mm-hmm. So do you see any reason, though, in waiting? Because like at the early part of starting a company, there's a lot of information gathering and pivoting and things that happen. And I know that sometimes projects will lose trust if they're like, yeah, we're doing this, but then there's a little bit of a pivot. So I guess my question just tagged on with that. So would there be like anything to look out for there?
Yeah, I think this is a common misconception, is that when you hire marketing, that means you're going public. It's not necessarily the case. You can hire marketing and be super secret and be stealth for a year with a marketing team and still get value from that. So, it doesn't necessarily be that like when you're hiring the marketing, you're going public immediately. There is kind of like a strategy to that. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be a full team. Maybe it's just like a marketing advisor who can kind of be involved in that process. And then kind of like, especially if that marketing, like I've done this before where I become an advisor, and then once you get to that point, you hire the company, you hire Siren to do the marketing. And that way, like, there's no ramp up time, there's no anything, and we're kind of involved in this entire process, and we've kind of helped you shape the materials that you'd be going live with. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Did you guys want to answer that question?
I could add one other thing to that.
Yeah, she answered.
Just the importance of, even if you hire a marketing team, which I would say if you have the resources, it's a good idea, be present on your community channels yourselves as well, because that makes it authentic if the core team is active. It's really hard to sort of fabricate that as a PR or community management team, but you can bolster and help it to grow if the core team is involved. Yeah.
I get into the project very early on stage, where we talk about whether we're going to have Facebook or not, or whether we're going to have a Twitter account or not. So what I wanted to know was, is Telegram group really necessary? Because it's a lot of effort and a lot of money. And also, all of my ICOs had over 30,000 users in a Telegram group, where it's really bad for the PR if the CEO pops out and says, oh, all the good developers are men. It's hard to clean up after those stuff. Whatever they say, is with a lot of marketing effort, it's hard to control their mouth. So I told them, like, I always argue in the beginning whether this Telegram is needed or not. And I want some expertise from you guys.
That's a very good question. So I personally loathe Telegram as an experience. Like, it's not pleasant for pretty much anyone, but it is kind of the standard. And I've heard a lot of founders come to me and say, basically I have this money, someone's going to give me $50,000, but they're not going to give it to me until I have 5,000 people in Telegram. And so that's why Telegram is there, because so many other people are using it as a metric. But really what's happening there is incredibly damaging to the community on the whole, that like it's kind of this measure of how successful you are, even though like for your business, like it's really stupid to spend a crazy amount of money for a marketing team maintaining something that literally gives you nothing except for that vanity metric. So I'm hoping that as a community we can grow past it, but realistically we're not there yet. And so people do still look at it for a metric. I wouldn't bank on it. Like, I wouldn't spend everything that you've got there. But the real answer is it really depends on what the project is. Like, I've recently consulted on a project where I was like, I really don't think Telegram is going to be helpful. If anything, it's probably going to hurt you more than anything. Just because I know the people who are on Telegram are not going to get it. They're going to constantly like be questioning it and making fun of it. So I'm like, just, keep to something a little bit more appropriate for your user base. Because really it's just about their users, like your users, where they are, how you can reach them, and what's going to provide them the most value should be the real deciding factor. I worked on gaming projects, and if I had my way, I would only keep everything in Discord, because that's just where those people are. That's where gamers are. And to have Telegram, it seems like a waste to me for most things, but we're just not grown up fully yet to that point.
And then, the other thing is that in other markets around the world, they're not using Telegram the way we are. So like in Japan and Asia, they're on Line, L-I-N-E. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that's their big system, their big thing. They buy their tickets from a source called PTix, which is out of Asia also. So thinking the end-all and be-all is on Telegram is naive, really. You got to dig deeper and really do your research. And if you're going to hire a marketing team, you also need to dig deep and do your research on them too. One of our clients wanted some presence in Europe, so they hired a team out of Europe that was, I think we all just about fell out of our chairs when they sent a new logo over that looked like the Dr. Dre Beats logo of a record for a security system. It just made no sense. There was a complete lack of understanding. So, $50,000 later, they figured out they needed to cut ties. So I would just say you really need to research who you're working with if you're going to work with a marketing team too, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. And at the end of the day, I said this earlier, if you have a project that you want to bring forward, you've got to live, breathe, and eat it, especially in this bear market, and get out there and don't underestimate your grassroots networking, because one person will lead you to another, to the right marketers. I mean, Callie today, is a great example of someone that would be a good marketer, to be in touch with. And we were talking before the panel about what her real thoughts were on Refereum and what happened and everything, and I'd love to hear her tell us, but maybe I'm outing her in a way she doesn't want to tell. But that's a pretty interesting experience to have. Not all of us can say we've been there.
Yes. I'll bring the mic. I was actually going to ask a follow-up question to that if I can. I noticed in the crypto and blockchain space, a lot of companies are using Telegram and Twitter more so than anything else. I feel like we're coming out of this age of Instagram and Facebook are everything, and now all of a sudden it's kind of transferred over to Telegram and Twitter. And myself, I hadn't used Twitter in 4 years, so I was like, oh my goodness, I have to remember my password and log back into this, and now turn it into this blockchain thing. When we're looking at so many different applications these days, what do you think is most effective or most important? Where do we get our brand out there? I noticed a lot of blockchain companies don't even have Instagram these days. Can you maybe give a little bit of thoughts on that?
Yes, so for us, we would say the same. Twitter and Telegram are probably our top places to interact with the community, as well as Reddit, which are not always the most traditional forms in other industries. But for us, I think it makes the most sense because it is still so technical. So a lot of the content that we're pushing out is content, is writing. It's not necessarily pictures. So that's why I think that Twitter and Telegram are some of the best places. For us, Telegram, I would say the same thing. It can be a hassle a lot of times, and it's hard, handling those communities. But at the same time, for us, it's kind of a place where people can ask us questions about our DApp, because there are a lot of just user experience questions. And so for us, it's the quickest way to answer them from our dev team. So that's why we find it useful. But I don't think every single project needs a Telegram, like you were saying, but definitely Twitter is an easy place to work with, and Medium is one of our top places to push out big news, big releases, and just interact with the local community. I'd say that those are the top ones. But for us, Instagram is more just a culture aspect. We don't use it to necessarily talk about our project that much. It's more just to show what we're doing and what we're involved in. I don't know if anyone.
I could add to that it really just depends on, and Callie, you were speaking to this before, but it depends on who you're trying to reach and who your users are. And I think Telegram and Twitter are most popular because crypto people are on those platforms. And as Zaji was speaking to, Twitter is good for conveying information, short bits of information, and Instagram is great for conveying visuals. I'd also challenge people in this industry to come up with more creative visuals. I think we're all getting tired of the same chain pictures, and that could be kind of fun if someone were to figure out how to depict blockchain in more interesting ways.
Yeah, 100%. I want to add on to that. Obviously, everything is happening in Twitter and Telegram. Telegram is, we've talked about that, but Twitter is, I love Twitter. I've been on Twitter since like 2008, so I'm OG, and and so it's a really easy way to it really kind of leverages, the whole ethos of Twitter has always been about like transparency, like, hey, I'm going to the bathroom right now. It's always been that sharing too much information, which really kind of goes kind of hand in hand with the sentiments about crypto, which is that things are open and transparent. So I think that's kind of why it naturally coalesced there. And some of the crypto influencers are really pithy in 140 characters. So I enjoy it for that reason. But other places are definitely Reddit. Reddit can be a scary place, but there's a lot of crypto stuff that happens there. Another thing to kind of focus on is these small networks. Like influencers are big, not just because they have a voice on Twitter or Telegram. It's that they have these little communities, and the people in those like VG, the people in those communities, respect the person who started that. And so if you can kind of get them to promote your product, then you're kind of getting this network effect there.
We have one more question right over here.
It's actually kind of a multi-part question. Do you guys feel like, from a marketing perspective, do you feel like marketing within the crypto space is different from traditional B2C? And how do you feel, especially with the changes in the industry itself and how quickly it's been changing, how do you feel like you guys stay on top of those tactics and that strategy? And how do you feel like it differs from a traditional B2C? And then on a second note, do you feel like it's smarter to employ an agency or a marketing team to be able to help you build your brand and follow along with those changing strategies, or have an internal team?
That's a good question. I think to a certain extent, marketing for crypto is the same as B2C, but it doesn't look like it. But traditionally, if you boil down marketing to its simplest form, it's finding out the people that you want to get and then figuring out how to get them. That's the equation is the same. But the answer to those questions are different. And you do have to respect the people who you're trying to attract. So, there's certain blockchain projects that don't have much of a blockchain element, they don't need crypto people, they need real people. And so you do have to have a kind of, a marketing plan for them. But it also is, on the other side of the token sale, you're attracting, investors, so crypto people. So there is kind of two disparate strategies going on at that point. But if you take the token sale stuff out of the way and you're just talking about marketing a crypto project, a big thing is just education so far, because if you want real people, then you need to educate them about why what your product is doing differently. I have a friend who's working on a project in a space where she needs to educate the crypto community about what they're doing, and she also needs to educate their users about crypto. And so you're educating on both sides. And it's a complicated space, but I think a lot of it is just kind of focusing on the user experience of signing up. I think that's a big part. I used to work as a user experience designer before I got back into marketing. And so one of the big things that I see as a problem in crypto, especially, it is related to marketing, because it doesn't matter if you bring 1 million people to download a product, if people don't know how to sign up or how to use it or how to get their wallet, then it doesn't matter. And so, it's focusing on basically making it as easy as possible is something that it's not just a problem specific to crypto, it is a problem specific to technology on the whole, is that we don't have enough empathy for our users in that regard.
I would agree with that, especially about the user experience, because I come from a background of that for many years. And, there's this old saying that if they have to click more than once, you've lost the user, they're on to another page, because those are attention spans of today's market. And that's especially true in crypto, because if you're looking to reach more traditional people that are not already in the crypto community, you've already got one hurdle to overcome, and that's just understanding. And this goes back to what I said about how you say what you're saying about your product is more important than anything else. Find a way to make that tangible in 1 or 2 sentences in a mission statement. And like Callie was saying, the minute if they're coming to a sign up or an app or whatever, that call to action, it's got to be like kindergarten. That call to action needs to be simple. Click here to do X. And then you take them through step by step, very simple, very easy, and boom, you've got users. But if you don't treat it that way, especially because, even more so because it's crypto and it's blockchain, and you've got traditional users that are gonna, this is not true for our crypto community, but for those of you that are involved in this community, it's kind of small. It's actually, we all know each other more than we realize, so I think some of these conferences like Crypto Invest and some others that are happening around the world are increasing that gap, and we're getting a lot of people, curious newcomers, which is great. We need them, and we need to be able to bring them along, right? Encourage them to join, because without new people, this won't last, right? And I don't believe it's going anywhere, but we need that for the growth and stability, really.
Yeah, and I would say as a marketer, like how to stay on top of it I don't sleep that much. I really I wake up and I check my phone, right? That's the first thing I do is I check, all the channels that I handle. I check any news that I have blockchain alerts set up to my phone. So just constantly being in the loop and understanding what's happening in the space, you have to stay on top of it. I went on vacation for 2 days. I came back, something crazy had already happened. Something was forked. I was like, great. So I think you have to just keep track of everything as close to it as you can. But I would definitely say user experience is one of the biggest things you can do. For us having a DApp, that's one of the most important things to keep users on our DApp. They get there, and if they're not familiar with the crypto space, already they stop at MetaMask. That's already too much. And that's not even entering the DApp yet. That's literally just setting up the MetaMask account. So trying to create content around how to do all of these, step-by-step processes are super helpful on your pages, but it's a tough space to balance. And then answering your second question, I think it's not necessarily important to have one person in-house or to have an agency. I don't think either one is more important. It's more who's going to be there and constantly be paying attention to what you're doing. I think you can hire somebody in-house that may not understand it and may not care that much, and you could do the same with an agency. But if it's a person that is willing to read your white paper, is willing to sit in on some of your meetings, is willing to understand what your product is, that's really what's the most important. It's not really if they're in-house or not. It's just that they're going to take the time to market or to do the PR for you that you need and is useful for your project.
Coming from a communications agency, I would say that it tends to work really well if there's at least one point person who's a marketing person in the team that we're working with. And we really act as an expansion of that person's marketing team then. And I'm sure, Zaji, you could probably speak to all the work there is to be done as a marketer. And so then when you get to a place where you're looking to expand what you're doing and who you're reaching out to, that's a good time to think about hiring an outside agency to support in that effort and maybe bring in some different strategies or creative thinking as to how to do that.
Just want to add on one thing about the internal versus agency. One consideration that, especially with marketing, I see a lot of people asking that question of whether they should hire somebody in-house or hire an agency. And there's one factor with an agency, one benefit to an agency, is that when I have multiple clients or things to kind of offer somebody, especially with influencers, influencer relationships are complicated because it's a give and take. You have to give them something and then you have to ask for something. And if you're if you're only working for one company, it's hard to keep that relationship open. So something that I usually do is like, I'll offer them something from somebody else, and then I'll ask for something from another client. And so like having that kind of breadth of network is something that's really hard to maintain as like a single, as an in-house person.
We got one more question right here, and we have time for one last question. Also, the Cybercode twins are in the house. Holla. 2 more female developers.
Yeah, my name is America, one of the Cybercode twins, and really curious, now that we're in a bear market, I think it's the best time to build. I'm wondering from the marketing aspect, how are you guys marketing to developers, especially when you're talking about protocols?
I am a developer, not a blockchain developer, but I was a coder before. And so it is important to have somebody on the team who has that respect for both, developers and marketing. But so, one aspect of that is, really maintaining this decentralized market. I consulted with a project that needed developers. And you really have to like be where they live, I think like going on Reddit and targeting them there. But it's just really maintaining a kind of culture of openness and having really good documentation is really important, especially it's the biggest thing that I've seen in the developer world in blockchain is that there's so little documentation that actually makes sense. So if you're trying to encourage people to adopt your protocol, it has to be like thoroughly documented. It's really good to have, a kind of maybe a tutorial-like personality to do YouTube videos showing things and reaching out to various other developer influencers.
And then as a company, Blockchain Industries tends to really select projects that are a little further along, so they already have their developers, they've already got some work done, the technology is a little more in place. Doesn't mean they're finished, but in terms of communicating with developers, we also keep one retained that we use and bring in to vet new projects before we take them on. And so we dig deep in our diligence through, our deal flow that comes through. So we give everyone a real fair shot. So we look at it from every side and really ask the tough questions and get in there and make sure that, we're thinking in terms of how a developer would think. And you can't do that if you don't have one that is on staff and willing to step forward. So I think, you're right, it is the time to build, and we agree with that 100%. I agree with it. And moving forward, if you're going to bring on a new project into this market, I've said it like 3 times, but you've got to be ready, willing to live, breathe, and eat it, especially with your technology, because only the stuff that's really going to change and shape the future is what's going to survive right now. So if you don't believe in the developers you have, interview a bunch of developers, bring on new people, do whatever you have to do to make sure that your tech is going to be top notch. And it will get a shot because people are interested. It's just fewer projects are going to move forward out of this time.
I would say a simple way that we're doing it is just doing dev updates. So actually having our developer team write as well. Like I think, forget that not only marketers have to be the people that are writing and have the voice in your company. Bring out some of those developers. They're talented individuals. They're super smart, obviously. They're the ones creating the back end for all of this. Have them write, have them share their story. So a lot of what we do is highlight the developer team and talk about just who they are as people, what they like to do. They're not just developers, and I think that that's really important. And then just sharing API points and things like that you don't have to just access our dApp from the front end. You can go in, you can check it out, you can check out our GitHub. All of that is a great way to target developers and have them go in from that angle, but just, I think, showing their personalities. Our team wouldn't be what it is without our developers, so that's what I love about it, and I think that all companies should really emphasize the team that they have behind them.
That was really well said. I think we should end on that note.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Let's give a big round of applause. Callie Nye, Lisa Moynihan, Zashi Reyes, and Nikki Brown, thank you so much.